Hello YouTube, welcome back to another thrilling instalment of the engine rebuild. Today we're going to have a look at the top end, starting off with the cylinder heads and what we're going to do with them. So let's dive in and have a look. Okay, so the first thing I normally do is check the studs are usable, which they are. They're not great, but they're usable. Check the threads are okay in inlet manifold, because if not, all of them will have to be addressed. These are okay. Check that the tubes haven't been battered beyond use. This one's slightly dented. I'll show you how we can make that round again in a short time, once we've done the rest of the head. I checked the spark plug threads, which are all good. So now we need to take our valves out. Oh no we don't, I've lied to you. Before we need to take our valves out, I just checked the rocker arm side to side, rock like that, to see if there's any excessive play, which there is not. Very small amount in that one, but it's been sitting in a parts washer for some time to get rid of the worst of the grease. So once that's oiled back up, I'm pretty certain that'll be okay as well. There's very minor rock there, nothing drastic. Now, the correct way to get your valves out is to remove the rocker arms, which we will do later, just so I can show you what you need to do. Now, they are held in by these two set screws, which have a peculiar head. Now, two parallel faces with curved ends. A 6mm spanner will fit them. I've got a good quality 6mm spanner, Facon one. Sometimes it'll get them off, sometimes it won't. So there is a tool which I'm going to show you shortly. But for this head, we're going to act as if you haven't got the tool, you haven't got access to the tool, and you've no intention of buying the tool. Now, to get the valves off, you're going to need a valve spring compressor. Now, I know these valves have been sitting for a long time, a very long time, and therefore the springs might need a little assistance to encourage them to free themselves off. So I did this earlier, so I'm just going to show you what we do. You rest your head on the edge of a table or similar. Can you see that still? No, you can't. There we go. I rested on the edge of my workbench, and then you find a deep socket which is bigger in diameter than your collets, which you can just see as a grey ring round a valve there. That fits over them. So you're going to tap that black circle there, and then you just give it one short tap. And if you do that to each of them, that will encourage the main ring to separate from the collets. So when you compress them, it should all come apart. And now we're going to find out. As I said, in theory, these are meant to come off. But if you're lucky, and depending on the type of valve spring compressor you have, if it has deep slots like that one, it is possible to position it so it's not in the way of the arms. Let's see if we can do it this way without getting in the way. Same thing, just make sure that you're lined up like that. Let's see if this will go. Oh, there we go. Now then, it may not be easy for you to see that. So I think what I'll do is I'll turn you off and I'll fit the macro lens and then try and show you close up exactly what I'm doing before I do it. Right, the valve spring compressor is working right at the edge of its depth. A motorbike one's probably better than a car one for a 2CV, but anyway, nonetheless. That's the centre of your valve. That's your valve stem there that your tappet works on, and there are your valve stem collets. So they've got to come out like so. without dropping them everywhere, which I've just done. One. Slightly fiddly, particularly when you're keeping out of the way of the camera. There we go. Right. So now we need to release the pressure on our valve, and I'll go back to an ordinary camera for that so you can see better. Okay, that's this lens swapped. So if we slowly release the pressure on the valve spring compressor, which can sometimes be easier said than done, it tends to pop. Ooh, like that. But we shall give it a go, and it didn't work. Okay, so there's your top cap, there's your valve spring, and there's your valve. Now that one is definitely free. So under, oh sorry, I forgot to, before we do that, there's also a bottom spring cap which protects the alloy of the head. So that's your components. That's getting carried away. Right, so under normal circumstances you just do a quick valve guide check, which would be to lift the valve off its seat a very small amount and then wiggle from side to side, and there is no play there at all. So we need to pop it out and have a look, and there are no major signs of distress on that valve at all. In fact, it looks remarkably clean. Right, okay, that does look remarkably clean. Right, okay, so keeping the components of each valve together, I'll now do exactly the same on the other valves. I will film it, but whether you end up seeing it all is not a matter, because it's essentially exactly the same procedure. So same again, and then push. This one's a bit tighter and a bit off centre. You can manhandle things out of the way if need be, like that. So let's see if we can get a collet out, which we can. 1, 2. Release the pressure as before. Top collar, valve spring, bottom collar, and then once again valve off the seat, no sign of it sticking. A very tiny amount, but nothing of any importance. And again, that looks pretty clean. The seat perhaps is slightly dished, but nothing untoward. So now we need to look inside our valve guides, which is impossible for you to see, but just I'll shine a light down through them to make sure there's no sign of any scoring. And those valve seats look pretty good. Dirty, as one would expect. Right, so the other thing you can do whilst you've got the head like this is take out your tappet adjusters, make sure that everything runs freely, there's no damage to the threads. And then the other important bit, which we'll look at when we've cleaned it, is the seating face around here where the barrel sits, because that can often be corroded away. It can often be damaged by exhaust gases trying to blow past and burning it away, but that looks really nice. So I'll go and clean all this up and we'll have a closer look at that. Right, last thing to do really is get rid of the valve stem oil seals before we go and clean it. That's them there. You sit round the guide. It can be a bit of a pain because they go brittle, If you get in underneath the metal ring and try and gently lever them upwards, sometimes only the metal ring comes off. Normally it takes both off. There we go. There we go. Do it carefully because the guides themselves, which are there, can be brittle. So gently is the best way forward. Right, so we need to clean up our surfaces and see what we got. Right, that's the combustion chamber cleaned up. It's in good nick. The ring where the cylinder sits is in good nick. If you wanted it absolutely perfect, have to have it vapor blasted or something, bead blasted of some sort. I'm not bothered. All that will go dark again very quickly. Our valves cleaned up pretty well. There's minor spotting on them and minor marking on the face, but it is very light. So really the next thing to do is to grind them in and see how well those faces clean up. That one's mint, even this distance you can tell it's perfect. That one's going to be pretty good I think, but we need to check. So we need to clean it and get some valve lapping paste on it. Okay, so I'm doing this the old-fashioned way because I'm old-fashioned. In fact, before we do that, I'll just talk a bit about the valves. I've measured the valve stems. They have very slight wear. You can probably just see it there when it's polished slightly. Very slight wear. Certainly not enough to condemn them. Both are good. Both cleaned up well. I washed out the valve guides in the parts washer just to make sure there was nothing untoward left over. And then used a gallery brush to make sure there are no deposits left inside, which there weren't. I then held it up to a very strong source of light and looked down the guides to look for scoring, discoloration, anything untoward, and there was nothing. Now, you can measure the guide bores if you have something like that, which is an internal expanding ball. And there is a measurement for that in the workshop manual. Mine come up again very, very slightly down on optimum. You can also use that to tell if there's uneven wear down them because you can feel it. There's nothing in that. That's nice and even all the way up. Now, accurate measuring is a skill in itself. And I prefer using the wiggle test we saw earlier, which gives you a rough idea. If you're not happy with the wiggle test, I would recommend doing what I do and taking it to a machine shop and let them decide. Because the correct use of stuff like this, I use it to give me an indication, but ask any old engineer and they'll tell you that a lot of their time when they were learning to be an engineer was learning how to do accurate measurements and repeating the accuracy of that measurement time and time again. Something which I'm not that confident of, to be honest. So wiggle test's fine. I measured everything up. I'm happy with the results I got. Had I not been, as I say, I would have taken it to my local engineering shop and let them decide. The final thing is the height of the valve springs. Citroen list a variety of heights depending on state of compression and the amount of pressure the valve springs are under. But basically, from what I can gather, because I don't think it's in the workshop manual from memory, I can't remember, 41 milli basically uncompressed, it should be 41 milli. And mine came at 40.864 or something, you know, again, not enough to make me worry. So they're going back on. Anyway, back to our guides. So the old-fashioned way, which lots of people will tell you is now obsolete because of hardened seats, etc, etc, etc. So it's a waste of time. Maybe it is, I don't know. It's the way I do it still, it's the way I've always done it, and I'm not changing now. So a small amount of paste on the edge of the valve like so. And then our rubber sucker. Oh dear, that wasn't very good. There we go. And then you lift, give it a bit, lift, give it a bit, lift, keep spinning it round. You can tell when you're running out of pace because it goes a lot quieter, a lot quicker. So I'm just going to keep doing this now. I'll time how long it takes me and I'll bring you back when I think we're about right. Right, that's been about 8 or 9 minutes approximately. So that should be enough for the pair of them. So what have we got? Let's get rid of all the grinding grit. This will be wiped out again and then put through the parts washer. Right, so exhaust valve, nice even light grey band right around it, which is what you want. And the seat itself, it's got very, very minor marking. The black bit's where the carbon stuck around the edge. It's not, yeah, way the light's catching it as well. That's pretty much got it. Minor marking on the exhaust seat, which is not uncommon. And the inlet, again, nice. It's got one mark there, which probably corresponds to that little mark there, which I think is probably where a bit off the barrel or something. Iron, steel, iron. That's sat, but you can't feel it. It's a mark. It's not a pit. It's a discoloration. So again, apart from that, nice even wide solid band. So I'm happy with that. Not worth recutting in my opinion. I think they will seal very well. So that's what we're going with. So this head is ready to go back together once I get the valve stem oil seals. And then with that, let me just find the appropriate tool to show you that. Right, I can't find it at the minute, but basically I just use a tapering punch so it just fits inside and just gently massage it, very, very gently, because these are fragile. So I will show you that again later if I find it. If not, that's not so bad, it can't go back together. Right, so the next step will be the removal of these, so I can show you what they look like taken off. The removal of those, the inspection of the flats, and then a thorough clean yet again. The second head is a bit grubbier. Again, all the important bits are okay. The rust is from the cylinder barrel where the water seeped in. So I'm just hoping that it hasn't got behind the valves. All the stuff that's on there appears very light, so I'm hoping it will all clean up. There's no point showing you the strip down because it's exactly the same as the other head. So I'll pull it apart, clean everything up, and if there are any problems I'll show you. If not, then we'll proceed with rebuilding the heads. So I'll go on with that and bring you back in a minute. Right, this head has now been cleaned up. Everything's good. This was the one that was worse, as you saw. The seats and things are cleaned up. The valve stems had a slightly powdery white deposit on them, especially the intake, which I assume was old fuel that had gone off. I've checked the valve guides, cleaned everything, there's no wear. So this is good to rebuild. So it will now go back into the parts washer for a second go. Try and get it a bit cleaner. And then we can rebuild the heads. So everything is reusable, which is a good thing, because it'll save me money. Right, back into the parts washer. The remainder of the top end is our pistons and barrels. Now I'm using second-hand ones because I have these pistons which were in a car for a year before it was damaged, accident damage, not mine, somebody else's. So they're in great condition. The inside of the barrel still has all its cross hatching, it's all intact, no scoring, scouring, damage, nothing. So rather than spend 150 quid, I'm going to use these. Now, the bottom of the, I've cleaned up the spigot where it fits into the crankcases, and I've cleaned up the spigot where it fits into the cylinder head, which is important if you're using second-hand stuff. So I know that that mating surface is going to be good because I've already done the head. Now, the bottom of the barrel is slightly chamfered and has two cutouts, which will enable you to fit the pistons without a ring compressor, if you so wish. I have got a ring compressor, so I'll show you both. I'll do this one with the ring compressor and the other one without, just so you can see the difference. So we're going to lube up our barrel, just ordinary bog standard engine oil. Well, it would do if there's any oil in the oil can. Oh, that's a good start, isn't it? Right, okay, 1 second while I go and fill up the oil can. The key to everything in life is preparation, and as you can see, I wasn't. Right, so get plenty of oil in there to encourage movement, and then lightly oil the rings. I don't like going mad with the rings. I prefer to oil the bore and just lightly coat the rings. And then our compressor. This is just a cheap motorcycle compressor. So we need to open this out. Get it over the rings. Let's be open that a bit more. Right. Tighten it up. Too tight. Because the compressor rings yet still be able to move. So I know they're fully compressed, and now I'm just going to back it off a little bit. There we go. So it will move. Like so. So we just get an edge to get us started. You can move the piston around once it's in, obviously, but it has a directional arrow. So we have two cutouts on top for our studs. There's one there in the middle and then a push rod tubes. So if that is like that, I know this is the right hand side pot as you're sitting in the car. The pistons might have an arrow going that way, so I know that on the right hand side the front of the car is that way. So it's going to go in like that. Now then, if we centralise it, oh, there we go, it wants to go already without me even trying. I was going to say, if we centralise it, you should drop in. Let me just tighten that up slightly because it seems to want to stick on the oil control ring. Just tighten that up a little bit more. Gently. This will sound very loud on camera. I've noticed before when I've been recording that things sound disproportionately loud. I'm really just very gently tapping that, as you can see. There you go, that's got to be in. Take it a little bit more. Right, so if we undo our ring compressor, that's our right hand part ready. Now, we want to gently tap it back out again, very slightly, to expose our gudgeon pin hole. There we are. There is a ring on the inside. Sorry, there is not the inside. There is a ring there, circlip, sorry. So as it goes on, I will insert the gudgeon pin from this side. So that's the right hand one done. So now we'll move on to the left hand one and do it by hand. Piston again, barrel again. So this time I'm going to do it by hand like we said. So plenty of lubrication. Lubricate the rings. Now I forgot to mention the last time that the rings need to be set at 120 degrees apart so that the gaps are evenly spread. So our arrow is pointing in the right direction. And then, as I said before, there are cutouts in the cylinder. Which enable you to get the rings started. And then when you've got them started, you just need to use a screwdriver to carefully encourage them into the bore, like so. And there we go. First one in. So then your second ring, find your gap again, which is there. Compress one side slightly, tilt it very slightly, so one side will go in, and then compress and very gently press down at the same time. There we go. And the oil control ring last, slightly tougher. It's quite thin. Got to be quite careful with the oil control ring, as it's got to keep it square as well. There we go. Square it up, leaving room for our, there we go, leaving room for our pin. So there you go. The ring compressor is easier, but not by much. That cost me, for a motorbike, it's a 75 to 80 millimeter. From memory, it cost me about £12. So take your pick. Neither is very hard, both work perfectly adequately. Here we are, 2 pistons and barrels, oiled. Give it a bit more oil in there. Oiled, ready to go.